Chapter 7. My lawyer Dominic managed to work out a plea bargain in exchange for the state to dismiss almost 16 total felony counts that Detective Munn had managed to keep filing against me every time I attempted to post bail on the charges against me. I had spent almost 9 months in custody, fighting the original robbery charges plus all the additional armed robbery charges Munn kept charging me with every time I posted bail. The first time I posted bail, Dominic had managed to get some of the original 11 counts against me dismissed and my bail reduced to $30,000. Satin and a few friends had gotten enough money together so that when I contacted and spoke to Filippelli and gave him my word that if he allowed me to give him 10 grand in cash instead of the $3,000, the 10% he would usually get, he could trust me without putting up a house as collateral. While he no longer liked or trusted Satin, Filippelli was an old gangster himself, and he told me he believed in me enough to put up the $30,000 for me. As soon as I posted bail and was released, and was on the freeway heading home, Munn had the sheriff's department pull us over and detain me until he could get there. He then rearrested me on new charges for new armed robbery cases. That required an additional $10,000 bail, which Filippelli posted once I called him and told him what Munn had done. Again, I posted bail, and this time I never even made it off the jail property before Detective Munn showed up to rearrest me on new armed robbery charges. Again, Filippelli on his own posted additional 10 grand. I was now on $50,000 worth of bail bonds and had 4 more additional armed robbery cases to fight. It became evident Munn was not going to let me out of jail. Again, I was getting dressed into my street clothes and was walking out into the jail foyer free. Out stepped Detective Munn and 2 new armed robbery charges and rearrested me. Up until now, the robberies were robberies I had not personally committed, but jobs Tony, Dorian, Jimmy, and his punk had all committed under my direction. This time though, he hit me with 2 cases I had actually committed, so I told Filippelli not to even bother posting the additional bail for fear that this detective was going to fool around and get lucky and hit me with new cases I had actually done. Robberies I had done before Satin taught me about the use of Hollywood makeup and disguises. Munn might actually find someone to ID me and subsequently convict me. So I resolved to just sit in jail and let my lawyer Dominic file harassment charges against Detective Munn for the way Munn had it out for me. Munn had overplayed his hand because now Dominic had something with which to bargain in my case. We would drop the charges against Detective Munn in exchange for all other cases against me to be dismissed. I would be allowed to plea bargain for a 90-day observation to the Department of Corrections. Based upon the evaluation and recommendations, I could either receive county jail time with work furlough and credit for time served, or if I got a prison recommendation, I would be sent to prison under the Youthful Offenders Act, which entitled me to the lowest range of eligibility for parole. Back then, California still had the indeterminate sentencing law, which meant almost every sentence to prison had a life top. Under the Youthful Offenders Act, I would be sentenced to 6 months to life, and my crime partner Jimmy would receive a single 5-year to life sentence if I took the deal. Unfortunately for me, just before I committed my last robbery, California had passed the new use a gun, go to prison law. Otherwise, armed robbery could be sentenced to only 1 year in the county jail. Tony and Dorian would receive the same deal I received for their robbery when Dominic represented them too. Everyone knew we were all connected to each other. Jimmy wanted to take the deal before Ben cracked completely and gave Jimmy up for all the robberies they had done together during their tri-state crime spree. Tony and Dorian knew they could end up with a drug program after their 90-day observation because they had a drugstore robbery and they claimed they did it because they were drug addicts. Everyone wanted me to agree to a plea bargain. Like I said before, I knew that no matter how much Ben swore he would not testify against us, he would do anything to get out and be with Stacy again. So I said fuck it, and I had agreed to a deal. So now I was going to prison for a 90-day observation. My fate was up to chance and dependent upon me staying out of trouble while there and receiving a positive report and recommendation for probation. Even though California had just passed the use a gun, go to prison law, the exception to this sentencing law was that a judge could still exercise his discretion based upon a favorable 90-day diagnostic report. While I had been there in the county jail, we had heard all the stories from the convicts there about what to expect, violence, gangs, and even about people being raped in prison. I remember all my friends saying, "It's never gonna happen to me. I'll get off. I'll kill. I'll be this. I'll be that. Nobody's raping me. I ain't getting turned out. I'll be the baddest thing to ever walk a prison yard, etc." The old convicts would ask me, "What about you, super kid?" That's what they called me, super kid. I answered, "Well, I'm learning that nothing is impossible and that anything can happen. I only know one thing for sure, and that's if anyone manages to fuck me, I'm fucking them right back." They all laughed and told me, "You'll make it, dude." Funny thing was that some of my friends got turned out and raped, but I never did. I was just so full of anger and rage. Anyway, my second day at the prison in Vacaville, I got a visit from my mother and Patty. Earlier that morning, during orientation, the prison staff had told us that if staff was escorting a prisoner from ADSEG or the hole, these prisoners would be in chains and we were to get out of the way of the escorts. Staff would holler "escort," and all inmates were to pull over against the wall out of their way. On my way out of the visiting room, which is on the mainline side of this big hallway corridor gate, if you were coming from the green side, which was reception to the mainline, for any reason, you had to check in at the desk at the gate and leave your identification card with them. It was called the green side because everyone in reception wore green colored clothing. Mainline wore blue clothing. As I was going through the gate, I noticed this guy sitting over by the canteen, inmate store. He was just sitting there. I don't know why, but something made me notice him. All the mainliners were going to the store, but for some reason, he stood out to me. One of the things the convicts used to warn us about prison was they called the hot ducket. It's a pass calling you to report somewhere on the main line, like medical or the dentist. They warned us that if someone wanted to get you, they would sometimes pay off an inmate clerk to ducket you to the dentist or the medical, where someone would be waiting to kill you. Well, what had happened, I found out later, was that the guy I had noticed sitting there on my way to the visit had been raped by two members of the Aryan Brotherhood, and after they had finished raping him, they cut his throat and left him for dead. The kid didn't die, and the two gang members had been taken to ADSEG and were in the hole fighting charges of sodomy and attempted murder. When I came out from my visit, which was only an hour long when you were in reception, I noticed that the same guy sitting in the same place. And at first I thought, I hope that guy isn't sitting there waiting for me, because I could sense he was there for violence. So I kept my eyes on him as I headed back to the green side. While I was at the gate waiting to get my identification card back from the desk officer, I heard a loud escort. I looked up to see two guards escorting this big ass biker looking dude in chains, coming right to the gate where I was waiting to retrieve my prison ID card. I had to actually squeeze myself up against the desk to make room for the escort to pass through the narrow gate. I remember the guy being escorted was carrying himself like he was the baddest dude in prison. He had a lot of Nazi tattoos all over his body. Just at the exact moment that I squeezed up against the desk to let him through the gate, the kid I had seen there by the canteen was there. He pushed me aside and started stabbing the shit out of the guy who was being escorted in chains. The kid hit him in his throat, neck, and chest. Blood was gushing out everywhere, splattering all over me, and on my face too. The guards who were there just stepped out of the way and were yelling at the dude to stop stabbing their escort. This kid did not stop until this big ass biker looking dude was dead. Once I got back to my prison cell and was washing all this dead man's blood off of my body and face, I was thinking to myself, man, this fucking shit is real. All the stories I'd heard about prison violence, it's real. I just watched this guy get butchered right in front of me and had his blood all over me. And I've only been here for 24 hours. So I hit my knees and said a prayer. God, I know I've been pissed off and I haven't talked to you in a while. I don't even know if you're listening to me anymore. Forgive me for my sins. And God, I'm only asking one favor. Take care of my mother and don't let her die while I'm in prison. And God, forgive me because I'm going to do whatever I have to do even if I have to kill everything that breathes. I'm not going to be the one murdered or butchered here in prison. I'm going to make it no matter what. This became my creed, I guess, that day, do unto others before they do unto you, if you have to. Later, I remember thinking about what the crime partner of that guy who had been killed, who was back in the hole, was thinking once he heard what happened about the kid who did it. So this is my introduction into prison life and death. While I had been in the county jail, all the older convicts, they loved me. They really liked the way I handled myself. They even started calling me Super Kid because I would fight anybody, any race at any time. I fought some big dudes, mostly black, because that's what was mostly there in the Alameda County Jail because of Oakland and the rest of the Bay Area. But no matter who, I would kick ass whenever I did fight. One of the things these older cons used to tell me was that when I got to prison, the first one who fucks with you, you fuck him up. You make an example of him. You have to beat him down, stab him and kill him, whatever. But whatever you do, you make sure it's bloody and it's got to be done in front of God and everybody. This way nobody else will want to mess with you. So this was the advice I went with to prison. I found out that the kid those two Aryan Brotherhood gang members had butt fucked and slit his throat, stabbed him up and left him for dead, had worked out every day for 2 years, saved up all his money and paid off a clerk to send his target one of those hot duckies we had been warned about. I had to respect and admire this kid for what he had done. So here I was in Vacaville on a 90-day observation, trying to do good and trying to stay out of trouble, trying to work and program to get a good recommendation. My lawyer had pulled a lot of moves to get me to this opportunity, not only for myself, but for Tony and Dorian too.